So I want to welcome you to this fifth little film on our series Pattern of the Month. Maybe you can see on the lava blocks behind me, I'm in Iceland, Fairy Tale Island, and home of hitching and microflies. And today I'm going to tie you two different kinds of micro tubes, one unweighted on a plastic and also one on a TTT, just to show you the little difference in tying. And I'm also going to tie you a hitch fly, the Black Simple Hitch, one of the simplest fly you can do, but also fly that can be very, very effective. I would say that micro flies and hitch catch the majority of the fish here in Iceland, but it can also be super effective on other rivers and other places. And I think actually we use these small flies and also the hitch technique a little too little. If you're interested in hitching, you can also check out our little hitch film that you find in our YouTube channel. So follow the tying and I hope you enjoy it. Well, this is the fifth film we do in our series Pattern of the Month, and I've been tying mostly big flies, and today I'm going to tie something totally different. I'm going to tie micro flies. I'm actually going to tie you 3 flies because they're fast, and I'm going to do them a little bit different. And look at these small flies, and you hear people say big flies, big fish, but that's not correct. I've taken a couple of my 40 pounders on flies only with 20 or to 30 millimeter of material. So big fish will be interested in a really small fly too. It's all up to the conditions. Okay, so this is what we're gonna tie. We're gonna tie a Willie Gun, Willie Gun micro, and Willie Gun is one of the classic British patterns that's been taking so many fish. I tie him a little bit different, but I really like the color combination, and I would say the colors here on this fly is good for the little, but with the water with a little bit of tint to it mostly. And I tie these on extra small fits. I'm going to use a black one today. I start by cutting it at an angle. I then melt a little bit, just a little edge on this tubing. Not too much, just a little bit. Try to melt it even. And then I'll put it on the vise. And this is all we're going to tie on. Make sure it's connected. Put the thread on. I'm tying with a black 12-0 thread today. And the important thing with the micros is in what order you do things. And I start by putting on most of the wings before I do the hackles, and then I end up with this last part of the wing. Start with yellow and make sure not take too much hair. Also make sure that you actually taper it well. I can use the little brush on this too, just to untangle it by pulling it through. Look at the hair, make sure it's tapered, meaning there are few long strands that will make the fly tapered and also swim in the right way. And I start by tying in this, and one of the things you do here is that it's very, very common that you tie in too much material. First wing should be really, really small. It's just to get a little bit of color. When I cut it, I take this and I twist it a little bit before I cut it. In that way I gather the hair and it's easier. The only sparkle on this fly is going to be a little bit of angel hair. I will do gold, Alta gold. It's a warm, really nice gold color to it. And I'm going to use only 2 strands. And since I double it, the fly will have 4. Put them on and put 1 turn and double back. Same I do on bigger flies. And then I don't need to taper, it's only 2 strands, so I just cut them on different parts. Just want a little bit of sparkle. Next material I put on is the orange part, and I use a really warm orange, burnt orange color, and make sure it's not too much, but also make sure it's a little bit longer to taper a little bit. And same thing, look through, look over the wing, pull a few of the long strands out to make this taper, hold it wide and put it in on top of the fly. I'm not going to tie this to the extreme. I mean, tying it in would be tiny little fly. I'm going to tie this to be maybe 25-30 millimeter fly, which is a really good small sized fly, I would say. You can fish it. Here we have a few strands, I just take those away. You can fish this fly quite a lot. So I do this, and then I will go on to the hackles. What I can do is I can take my thumbnail and make sure it's wide enough. Just pull it down a little bit, spread it over the tube, and go back with 1 or 2 turns. Have to remember that all this needs to be covered up by the hackles. I'm going to use 2 hackles. I use soft hackles or chickaboos. On the smallest flies I use a false hackle, but I really hate false hackles. But on the smallest flies, the tiny ones, the ones that are maybe 5-6 millimeters, it's not possible to do a good hackle. It's just to get a little bit of the color to the fly. Okay, and I cut it and I use support, and here is, I need to be accurate. I do that little triangle and I tie it in. Just a few turns. Here I can use the hackle plier that disappeared. Here we go. On the smallest hackles, the hackle plier makes it easier. And I just take this and I double it, 3 fingers, pull back the strands and tie it in. 2 turns will be nice. And secure it with a thread. Like that. I've been saying it before when I do these films, I don't have much light. The light is on your side. Okay, so a little bit of hackle here. And I'm gonna add the colors with another hackle, putting black hackle in front, and make sure this is a little bit longer than the orange grizzly one. And I treat it the same. I do all hackles. I just always tie it in the front and just pull back and create that triangle by cutting. This is a really neat way of doing it, I think, and it'll be easy to pull it on, and you have the softest strands in the front, meaning you get more motion to the fly. Take this and I hold back and I tie it in. 1, 2 turns is good. A little more black than orange, just like it should be. And here I now have to be really careful with the thread, so I work with the thread on top and not in front, because everything here now needs to be covered up by the cone. I use my scissor here to divide this, just pull down the hackles a little bit so I get even amount of fibers both sides, and I just tie it down a little bit. 1 or 2 turns just to split it up. I then go on with the last wing, which is going to be black. I use fox body hair, and it's soft and it's got quite a bit of volume to it, and I can use few strands, keeping the fly being translucent. So I take this, and as you see, it's too even, so I will pull this out, create a good taper with a few strands that will move and swim in a good way, just like that, and I tie it in. Here I decide the length here, how long I want it to be. This will be good at about, as I said, about 30 mil. And I pull and pull hard in the thread. And remember, what's holding the material is when you stretch the thread. So you need to pull it out and stretch it when you pull it, put it on. That's what's going to hold the material. Then I cut this. And cut close, good, with a really sharp scissor, using samples of our new materials. These are the what we will call ergonomic version, where it's tilted a bit. When you start using that, it's very hard to use a straight scissor after that. Okay, so I'll put on a couple of jungle corks, and actually in every film I've been showing my sightis. We have to do this the right way. The sightis is not here now because it's in my bag. Just came back from fishing and just on my way going fishing again. You have to remember, it's just as illegal to travel with flies that have jungle cork without sightis as it is to travel with the actual capes. I formed this jungle cork a little bit over my thumbnail, making it curve the way I want it to, and I always start with the one on my side, and I just hold it in and tie it in. If it twists, this one is falling down a little bit, I use my thumbnail, and here I can adjust, slip the feather on the side of the tubing, so I get it in the position I want it. If it's sliding too much, you just take it off, but normally you don't need that. So I form this and take away a little bit of the soft part, and I look from above. Normally I twist the vise here, but I'm not going to do that now because then we lose focus on our filming. Look, so it's okay, in the right position, and I pull out the little piece here. I can use the scissor just to pull it out if this guy don't want to be pulled, like that, and I just cut it really close. Starting fishing those, I always use the regular cone. Now I fish these ones both with the turbo and with the half turbo, but today, since I've been tying with those before, I'm gonna tie it with the regular cone. The small regular cone creates a quite narrow profile to the fly, and again, the organizer, super good. Okay, and on this Willie Gun, I will use a gold one, and I will just pull it down a little bit onto the tubing before I take a little bit of glue. And this bottle is getting a bit old, it's been open too much, and I use support and I put a little glue just couple of millimeters away from everything. I will hold this and I will take the thread and I will pick up some glue. When I've done that, I can just cut this immediately. It needs just a few seconds, and then I pull down the cone and I pull it down tight on close and to cover up all the thread. And it's really important with all fly tying is that the cone really covers up the thread, because otherwise the teeth of the fish will make this fly break. Okay, so I take it out of the vise, and as I said, it's really simple fly tying. I use support by my fingers and I cut this about 2 mil, and I will hold it up Newton weight and I will melt it down just nice and slow. And a few seconds before we touch it, so the plastic is not soft, because then we're gonna damage it. Okay, micro Willie Gun, and it doesn't look much to the world. Oh, here we have one strand of angel hair that's been, I thought I cut that, but easy to do afterwards too. It's a small, really nice fishing fly in these fantastic color combinations, the yellow, orange and black. It's super good. Actually, you can fish this on the clear river too, but it's good and it's really light. Fish it on a floater, it will be straight under the surface. You will for sure see all the fish that take this fly. Okay. So this was the first way of doing this. Now I'm going to do a little bit different. A fly that we can fish a little bit deeper down, or preferable in the faster water. Well, I told you before, I'm crazy about flies. I carry so many flies. I have boxes and boxes full of flies, and now also wallets. But small flies, I prefer to have them actually in what we call a micro box. Okay, so now I'm going to tie one on a TTT, and the tying is almost the same. And I will use our small TTT, and I will use it in a gold metallic, orange metallic color. What I do is I start the same. I use our fits extra small, and I will start by melting a little edge here. Here I can melt a little bit bigger if I want. The only purpose for this is that it will stay on the back side of the TTT. And I take it and I push it through, and I can, if I want, use my little plier. I use it by habit. You can pull it by your fingers, but I use the little plier to pull this through. And I put it on, and the tying is almost the same. Use the same thread. And on small flies, of course, it's quite important to use a small thread, a thin thread, sorry. Otherwise, it's going to be way too bulky. And I start with yellow again, little bit. Normally, when I tie micros, my TTTs are perhaps a little bigger. A few millimeters longer, and also a little bit more material. It's because I fish them in faster water, and they need to be slightly bigger. So I start by putting on the yellow underwing. Make sure it's quite spread. And cut it off, and it's easy to cut on the TTT because you just put the scissor on the edge of the metallic part and just cut it off. I do the same here. I only use 2 strands of gold angel hair, and if you want to have a bit more sparkle, you just put angel hair between the orange and the black. I prefer to put it between the yellow and the orange because the material will come closer to the fish, and the little sparkle we have in the fly should be seen by the fish, not the fisherman or fly tyer. And I cut them off same way as before, and I go on with the same material, orange, really soft body hair, and I really like this burnt orange color. The pale orange is probably better for flies you fish in really dirty water, but this is just for tea colored water, so I prefer this burnt orange one. And I pull out, get a little taper here, make sure it's not too much, keep it wide, 5 millimeters, longer than the yellow, put it in on top and tie it in. Use my thumbnail to spread this so it gets even. A few strands coming down here. It happens all the time when you put material on and you turn your thread this way, you will push the material down on the other side of the fly, and you have to just be aware so you don't leave a lot of hair hanging down underneath. You want a wing that's put on top so the fly will balance and steer. It's the wing that will steer the fly through the water. Okay, so here on the other one I put on the hackles. I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to go straight on and put the full wing on first. And I do same body hair. And this was easy because it's quite long, and meaning that it's easy to taper it. It's also easy to take too much, but I'll try to form this wing in the way I want before I tie it in. See, so I get a few long strands. If it's too much, I just take away a few. Make sure it's wide, put it in, form it so I can see that it looks good on top. Right length, and tie it in on top. Good. Cut it against the TTT. And now it's time to put those jungle cock eyes on. Need to spread this just a little bit. And keep your thread close to the end of the TTT, so you really use part to tie in. I'm going to tie 2 hackles afterwards, so I need the space. Okay, so I go with the jungle cocks, and I use these small feathers. I prefer to use small feathers where I tie in the full feather. I think that creates a fly that's more beautiful, and I said it before. Jungle cocks are for the tire, not for the fish. I also said it's impossible to catch a fish on a fly without jungle cock, and that's because I never tie them on. I like those feathers, but I also like to do things in the right way. Okay, so that's why I use this certificate Okay, so I take this and I look, so I have it the same length, and I tie it in. Again, normally I twist the fly so I can see it's in the right way. Now I need to do this or I will destroy the filming here. Got some strands here pointing out. I need just to take those away. Here we go, keep it clean. So wing is ready, and what I do now is I take the hackles, and I will use the same kind of hackles as before. Very soft, tiny, soft hackles or chickaboo. It doesn't really matter what they're called, actually, it's how they behave. And you want the super soft fibers, and this orange one should be shorter than the black I'm putting on afterwards. Create the triangle as before and tie it in. And I do this now on the TTT, not down on the plastic. If I want to, I can put a little bit of glue here, just on top of the wing to secure the wing. And since this is an old bottle, I will take a little bit and put it on my needle and just make sure I get a little bit right where I secure the wing. And super glue will make this go from the most vulnerable part to the strongest part of the fly. Okay, so I do the hackles. This was a little twisted feather, but it doesn't really matter. I do the same. I take this and I pull back the strands and I tie it in. This time I do this without the plier, and it's like this. It's easier to pull hard and to be accurate without the hackle plier, I think. It's just some feathers are so small, it's just not possible. Cut it off, and then I go for black one. And the difference here tying on the TTT is that both hackles will be tied up in front of the wing. And I will now tie this in, do the same, tie it in, and move down the thread onto the plastic. Tie this one turn on the TTT, and I do 2 turns in front. It's got to do how many turns of hackle. It's got to do with how many fibers on this feather. And since this had quite a few fibers, 2 is enough. And I secure it. See how this looks like. Looks like this will be creating a nice little drop form. Again, everything drop formed, and I cut this off. And on TTTs, I work with micro turbos on all sizes, actually, of flies. It's a really nice way of securing that the thread will be covered. And oh, it's good to put it on the right way, don't you think? Maybe that's the next thing we do. We turn them around to create even more turbulence. Tried it, but actually they create the same. So okay, so I'll do again the same. Here I can just use support and I put a little bit of glue in front of the hackles. The reason I do this is I don't want the hackles to suck up the glue, and I take this and I move some of the glue in here close. Then I can cut this off. Sometimes I just leave the thread until I push down the cone and do it afterwards. Take the fly out of the vise, make sure this is tight, and I cut it 2 mil and I burn it same way. Make sure it doesn't start burning, just melting it. Leave it a little bit, and if I do it this way, there's a hole for my leader, which is good. And I'm gonna wet this a little bit to show you a little bit of the profile of the fly. The water will push down the hackles, create that heavy front part, and then the tapered wing here with the very, very few strands will swim nicely. So in my box I always carry both of those kinds of micros, where I have one that is super light and one that is got a little bit of weight to it. When I fish in the white water with the small fly, I don't want it to skate too much. If I wanted to skate, I can use that, but most of the time I wanted to fish just below the waves, and then the small TTT is superb to create that. So we're in August, it's a lot of low water, and very often in August difficult conditions to fish in actually, and to fish the small fly is can be very, very effective, and you can pick up fish that nobody else caught before by just using smaller flies. I think in general we fish too big flies, so don't be afraid even to go down and fish the tiny little tube. It can also be super effective also for the bigger fish. Now I just have one little fly I wanted to tell you, and it's so simple that I actually call it the simple fly, and it's a fly that I very often fish as a hitch, and I got a bunch of them right here. They are so super simple, and there's a few things to think about when you tie them, but they are easy but effective. So this third fly I'm going to tie on the medium tubing. I'm going to tie it on a black one, and I will cut it so that I get the length of the fly with the hook in the center, like I always prefer. This time this fly is going to be tied without a cone, and since it's a hitch fly, that's the reason I do it without the cone. You need to have it as light as possible. I'm changing thread. I'm going over to the fluorescent orange 12-0, and we have those here we go. We have those threads in 2 fluorescent colors, and it's actually because it's the only 2 I need and use, and that's the orange and the chartreuse one. And here we go. Please. Sometimes when I need more tension, I use this. I put the thread around the bobbin like this. But here with this, I don't need this to be too strong, especially when I use very strong thread for bombers and things like that. I use that. Okay, so this simple fly, I tie in the orange thread right in the front of this. And then the only thing I'm going to put on is a wing, and I use a straight material because the wing is going to be put on top of the fly. And I look at it before I cut it off so I get a really nice taper. I don't want it to be too thick. I can take away some of the hair and look at this. So I have a fly that will look like that. I cut it very, very even. Again, a sharp scissor is important. And I tie this in. And here I will just push a little bit and tie this in and form a little head. And it's like this when you work with fluorescent threads, that you need to use a little more thread just to create a thick enough layer so the glue or varnish will not go through and make this look too dull. You can see there's a thin wing. It's tapered few strands here and it's put right on top of the tube. What I do here is this fly is ready. Looks maybe ridiculously simple, but why should I show you this fly? Well, it's taken me many good fish, and this is my favorite hitch fly. I think actually we hitch too little. We tend to be afraid to fish on the surface, especially us Scandinavians, but it can be really effective. Sometimes when you can't get the fish to take a regular fly, they will come for the hitch. And this fly, this is a big hitch fly. I fish those in all sizes. I have a whole bunch of them right here, tied for this fishing I do now. Also down to super small ones. Another color combination, the green thread as I showed you on clear tubing. But the tricks here is, first of all, put the wing on the top. Make sure that when this is dried up, you will take the thread away. And what I do on those, I actually now need this to dry up a little more. I actually use a little bit of Gulf that is with a UV lamp, and I will just make sure that this will dry up. I need to wait for this to do this a little bit later, but I wanted to show you how I do the hole on this fly. I'm gonna put this away, and I'm gonna take one of these other ones I have right here, and you see this already got a bit of this is a very thin one. I do some a little thicker and some a little thinner, but what I do here is I use my needle, and I will just do it like this. I just warm the needle a little bit with a lighter, and you can do this also with the, and then I just put this in about 1 centimeter away. See if you can see that right there, 1 centimeter away, and I do the same on the other side. If you warm a needle, oh, I lost that. Tying too many hitch flies here. If you warm a needle, you will get quite a round hole, and I always do a hole on each side. Some people, when they fish a hitch, they put the hole underneath, which also works just fine, but I do it like this. So I have a hole, one hole to fish on the right bank and one hole to fish on the left bank. It's also, when it comes to how good the fly will hitch, it's about how far down you put your hole. I would say I'll do it on a big fly like this, about 1 centimeter down. On the small hitch flies, like the tiny ones like this, the hole needs to be in the middle of the tube, or the fly won't hitch as good. So 3 flies. We did the Black Simple Hitch, we did TTT Willie Gun, and the regular Micro Willie Gun. And they're all good fishing flies that's given me good fish, and I hope they will give you a few great fish too, and I hope you enjoyed this tying. And I'm now leaving for a trip where everything this size would be considered to be a very, very big fly. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it, and tune in a month's time and we do something completely different.